You are rolling. Can you stop? Can you please stop, like, not telling me when we're rolling? God,
I just
what
told
if I'm
you.
like
I
picking
just
in my teeth or something?
right now we're rolling.
All right, great. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Roll Off a Tangent podcast, where some of us are really mad and others are not so much. I hope you will enjoy tonight's episode because some of you may find this strange, but this is probably one of my favorite Conan stories of all time. Um, Even though it's short and some may consider it not as interesting as the other ones because not a lot of like flashy stuff happens. But honestly, the God and the Ball, the thing is something that's very dear and near to my heart.
So why is that, Nikki? I'm like super curious right now.
Let me tell you what happens in the story. First of all,
Mm-hmm.
there's the sequence of events begins with a watchman whose name is Aris, who's basically inside this temple called I think it's called Kalian Publico's Temple,
Yep.
and he sort of walks in on the dead body of his employer, and he's like, "Oh shit, something went down." And then not long after, Conan is like discovered in, and a bunch of other characters sort of like come onto the scene. It sort of feels like a play, the way it's written.
Mm.
Um, and you've got Demetrio, the Numalian Inquisitor, Dionys, the Navunalian Watchman, Inaro, what's it called? The Charioteer, I think. The Clerk, Promero,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's the guy who is introduced right at the end, basically. Well, not right at the end, but super late in the game. The actual reason as to why Conan is there, Astrias Pitanius, super Roman sounding name. Um, he's the noble guy who actually told Conan why he should be here. Um, and he gets sort of like, the moral of the story is like the barbarian in the situation is actually the nobleman, really, because he doesn't betray his employer until he betrays him. Um, so I think he was there to steal some sort of a goblet, but it doesn't really matter because the story is exactly what you want from the Conan story. The situation involves Conan partially. He is just like you, an observer in this situation, because he was there to do something else completely. He has no intention to find the monster that he will fight at the end. He has no desire to actually solve the mystery. He's there because he got caught doing something else, and now he has to deal with this situation. I think it's the pinnacle of Conan's adventuring, always sort of having to power through situations, even though it didn't really involve him. Like, it didn't really have anything to do with him from the beginning. And the murder mystery is really interesting. Like, you get more and more information as to what's happening. There's a mystery of why Conan is there, which gets revealed, obviously, which is also interesting. Everybody has different motivations, and you get to explore that. And how many pages is it? Like 20? Like 15?
20, yeah.
Yeah, somewhere there. And it all happens. Like, you see the sort of like the lines of all these people and what they want and what they desire. And you get behind the ideas of what they want to do. Like, Dimitri is probably my favorite character because he's there for the truth, right? And as someone who believes that that's what justice should really always be about, the truth, right? Like, what really happened and why. He is always the barrier, basically, from which Conan is being left alive for, because every time he's kind of saving him, or at least giving more reasons for the investigation to continue, so that he doesn't get immediately executed, right? And so Conan, although a man of the wild, he probably has more in common with Dimitri than anyone else in that story, because both of them are sort of like in this idea of survival and truth and an end goal. And Conan is also the only person who doesn't run away from the monster basically at the end, which it's classical Conan, right? Like he never backs down. It's a huge snake person. Spoilers. Well, it's not a person, really. It's just a huge snake. But when I was a kid, I imagined it to be like a snake person. So this like huge snake comes out from the ball, the god in the ball, right? Basically the ball itself has been sent out to the public host temple by people from Stygia, from like high priests of Stygia, who basically brought it as a gift. And obviously, it actually contains like a monster that was supposed to kill someone, and I mean it did its job, right? So I think all of the elements together create the perfect Conan story. It has everything when you think about a Conan story that it should have. It's got mystery, it's got a great monster, it's got like a situation that Conan has to deal with that he didn't do himself. He just has to live through these weird things that civilized people do around here, right? Probably where Conan comes from, right? Like it's thought that he's a barbarian. Their trials looks more like like a bunch of people sort of like talking about the situation rather than like looking for clues and like walking around and stuff like that, right? Like it's all about the word of the wild man. While here he, like there's like clues and people try and do stuff around him, trying to understand him, betray him. It's exactly what it happens in basically all my thoughts when I think of Conan, like interacting with a society of civilized people, right? He just doesn't get it. He doesn't understand them, and that's where the joy and the interest of his character comes from. This interaction of a barbarian with the civilized world. But yeah, that's basically why The God in the Ball is my favorite.
Mm-hmm.
I would agree that it is one of the best Conan stories. Certainly, I think it's the best of the shorter ones. Anyway, there are some much longer ones which can't really be compared directly to it. But yeah, I would say this story is remarkable for the author's skill in balancing two requirements. He has to keep the story moving, but also he has to make the background as wide and deep as possible to make it interesting, and he does it by paying out the background in little dribs and drabs that keep perfect pace with the dialogue and the action. And just to give you one example, when they're interrogating Conan and Dionys says, if we find no one, I find no one else, I promise you that you shall burn. Remember the law, my black-haired savage. For slaying an artisan, you go to the mines. A tradesman, you hang. A gentleman, you burn. Now, this sort of thing is very revealing of the kind of society, the stratified society that Conan finds himself in. So you could almost write a sociological treatise just from that one paragraph, and it's all like that.
Yeah, and I mean, if we are quoting our favorite paragraphs, I think mine is the exchange where Conan basically spills the beans of why he's here, to get you into the idea, the nobleman is sort of like speaking of Conan. A vicious-looking brood, murmured the young aristocrat. How can any doubt his guilt? I have never seen such a villainous countenance before. Dog, snarled the Cimmerian, when you hired me to steal the Zamorean goblet for you. Revels, eh? Bah! You were waiting in the shadows for me to hand you the goblet. I would not have revealed your name if you had given me fair words. Now tell these dogs that you saw me climb the wall after the watchman made the last round. so that they'll know I didn't have time to kill this fat swine before Iris entered and found the body. I love him. He's like, yeah, so this guy you guys worked for, this fat man, I didn't kill him. Tell him I didn't kill this fatty. Like, I love this. It's Conan. It's the best.
Yep.
Simply.
Yeah, you learn a lot about the character in this story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think you described it spot on when you say it's like a play. That was pretty much my thought, Nikki, when I was reading it. Like the characters just keep entering from the right or something like that. They just keep coming in.
Enter stage right. Yeah.
They just keep coming in, and I was like, honestly, I was like, if I were writing a scene like this, I would have a lot of difficulty trying to juggle all the characters together, because I find one of the more challenging things in writing is especially in a short story is when you have all these characters and you kind of need to give them a reason to be there, so all of them need to have some screen time, so to speak, in TV terms, screen time, some sort of importance, a reason why they're there and stuff like that. And it gets really complicated. The more characters in the story, the more complicated it gets, because the threads of the relationship gets exponentially harder to weave together the more characters you put in. So I was reading this, I was like, wow, the characters just keep coming in. But the cool thing I thought about this story is that Robert E. Howard did actually manage to juggle all the characters together in a meaningful way. Like they all do have a reason to be there. They are not left in the dust. They don't get introduced and then suddenly disappear, although physically they're still on screen, but their presence just they don't do anything else in the scene. Like all of them have a function to perform. There's a reason for them to be there. They're removed in the right manner. Some quite literally, like the nobleman whose head was offed by Conan. That was pretty brutal. Yeah, so I thought this story was very punchy, was very had very good pacing, was written well, with the characters all doing something, and also, like Rob said, the reader does get like a sense of the background, like just like the reader was fed information about the society, not just the society, but also like the relationship between Stygia and I don't know, I can't remember who did they send. It's not to this city that the Trojan horse was sent, was it? It was some other city.
So there was the Stygian sorcerer. But who does he send the?
I'm just trying to look it up. Yeah. Anyway, the point is that it gives the monster a reason to be there, because he's the present, in inverted commas, the gift, the deadly gift that's being sent by one sorcerer to another.
Yeah.
By the way, it's not just a snake; it's a snake with a human head on the end, isn't it?
So you're not exactly wrong, Nikki, when you thought it was a snake person.
Well, you know, it happens. But it's still it's still more of a snake than it is of a person, right? So I can't remember where the sarcophagus was actually supposed to go. I remember it being like a gift to someone. So like the gift itself was meant to kill something.
Yep.
Hmm.
Now what's interesting about it is that there's so much lot of motivation and things ongoing in the situation, and it's so blissful that Conan is our main character, because Conan doesn't give a damn who is this sarcophagus going to, why do all these people care that this fat man is dead. All he wants situation, because he failed getting this stupid goblet. So I guess he can continue on his adventures. But these civilized people are not letting him go. So he's like indulging them in this whole like, I'm innocent. I didn't kill anybody. Only a thief. I love his defense. Like I didn't kill this dude. I'm just here late at night for other stuff.
Hmm.
It's so good.
Hmm.
Because I guess maybe in his brutish mind he believes that like if you're free of that crime they can't like but you're admitting to another crime, right? So you're probably going to the mines anyway, but it doesn't matter in his mind. He's like, well, I didn't do this one, so you can't punish me. I love it.
Yes. Yeah, it's
And
a very cool
yeah.
story. Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, it's Caranthes who was the intended recipient of the bowl, but it never got to him because it was kept by this Callian chap.
Yes.
So there
The
we are.
the story as it goes was this Callian chap, as Rob called him, was only supposed to be a middleman to pass the thing on to the intended recipient, but
So that's another
he's-
moral of this story, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
full of morals, this story. Like one of them is don't open things that weren't intended for you.
or a
Yeah.
giant snake man will come out
Hmm.
and eat you.
Quite.
yeah.
Also, it has to be said that Conan's own idea of property rights isn't all that firm at the moment because he's making his living as a thief.
Well, isn't he always basically a thief in all of the stories? I mean, like the first reviewed, if you remember all the way back to episode 1, was the Tower of the Elephant, right? And there he basically like has an argument in a bar, and he's like, I could steal it, and they're like, no, you can't, you're an idiot, and then, you can't talk to me like that, I'm Conan. Like, who's Conan? And he's like, throws him through the table. I'm Conan, and I'm gonna go steal it, right?
But by the end of his career, though, if we look ahead, when he becomes a king, presumably he ceases to approve of thievery. You know,
Did he?
I mean, you could say that he stole his kingdom, so, but
yeah.
it's true.
But once you get to the top, you know, you want stability. So
I mean, right, depends, but yeah, sure. There is the constant battle within the story is law versus chaos. You know, it's the idea of finding out the truth versus surviving, because all Conan wants to do is to live. That's literally his motivation. And it's his and I mean, you don't need much for motivation. That's another probably like a little lesson for those of us who write characters, and especially protagonists. Motivation can be very poignant and very small, but if it's understood, if it's something powerful like survival, there's not much you need to explain to the reader. You understand why Conan wants to survive. Don't we all? Don't we all want to have, another breath of life? It makes sense, right? So Conan as a character, because of his simple traits, and that's why he lives on, because you can relate. I mean, maybe not with the thievery and killing, but you can definitely surviving and pushing yourself and making strides in the world to survive.
Yeah, I mean, it helps if you've got enormous muscles. But I suppose you could say that he keeps his muscles through some of his moral qualities. That is to say, he leads a fairly strenuous life. He's not a couched potato, he doesn't just loll around watching television.
No, that's true.
I feel called out. But I mean, honestly, Conan as a person is someone you would want on your side. It's someone you'd want to have as a friend. Because if you're true to your word, if he deems you as worthy, he'll help you. He wasn't gonna betray his employer right until the point where the guy basically sold him. Like he sold him out. He's like, I don't know this dude. Looks like some sort of a brute. Yeah, whatever. He's guilty. and Conan is like, all right, fine. Like
Yeah.
I can't play by these civilized rules. I'll tell them how it is. Maybe they'll believe me.
Yeah, yeah, he's good to have on your side, and also whatever you do, don't let him down.
Or your head will fly off from your shoulders.
Yeah, yes.
It's like that famous shampoo.
Hmm.
What I mean, from what I understand, actually, this is like your first couple of times to read the actual story, right? You didn't read it beforehand, did you?
No.
So what are you, as a first time reader, what are your overall impressions when you
So I think
and reading it?
just also based on our experience writing together, Nikki, you probably know that what I really like are backstories, world lore, so to speak. And what I like about both of the stories I read, the Tower of the Elephant and and this particular God in the Bow, is that it's a sprinkle throughout the entire story. You could read about the world and the lore and the history of Conan's world in the background. And the more you read, the bigger the puzzle, the bigger the picture presents itself, and then connecting the dots between the relationship of not just the characters but also the different countries, territories, I should say, have with each other. Like this time round, we get a sense of the of what Stygia is in the world of Conan. The relationship it has with the rest of the world, and also Stygia is just basically really feared throughout Conan's world, and you also get a sense of the history, and all those things are usually, to me, they're always more fascinating than the actual story itself. I always find those things more interesting.
For sure. And I mean it also tells a lot about the world of Conan, because the Stygians are also just associated with the god they worship, Set. And that's kind of part of why they're so feared, right? So people and power, and that's what really matters in this world.
Yeah. And it's very, it's like the other thing I really like about it is, so all of these stories are basically, they're really standalone. You don't have to read them in order. You can just sort of read, and you could basically parachute into Conan's world reading any of the story. It doesn't have to be read in order, like I already said, and it will still make a kind of sense, because each story, Robert E. Howard repeats some of the stuff that he has written before, but also sprinkles in something new. So there's always something new in every story, in both of the story I've read anyway, and also he repeats some of the stuff that he's already written before. Like I think this Namibia, this city, Conan has been in it in the Tower of the Elephant. Because I clearly remember Namibia being mentioned in the Tower of the Elephant as well. The Prince of Thieves, I think, is a Namibian.
That's right.
Yeah. So in this way, people get to learn more about the world, but it's not always but it's not completely repetitive, so there's always something a little bit new to learn. And I also just really like the fact that Robert E. Howard just kind of writes expecting the reader to kind of know all this stuff. He's just like, he just drops all this lore without any thought to, without apology, so to speak. He just kind of expects the reader to connect the dots at some point. And I think that's a very nice way of handling like a lore heavy world, because reading codexes are not fun. So whenever we have like a lore dump, like just a huge chunk of words, like a wall of text that the author just dropped in to describe the world. We all know what the author is trying to do. He's trying to flesh out the world, but he's not adroit enough to spread it out over the course of the story. Instead, he just kind of drops it in. Dum. So I'm guilty of doing that myself, and I'm trying not to, but this is a very good to me is a good method.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, that's kind of what Robert E. Howard is famous for, just like Lovecraft. Both of them, people who had to write a lot of stuff with limited amount of time and words on it if they wanted to. I mean, like a lot of times they just submitted stuff that they wrote, but sometimes they would be taking these contracts. You know, like in the 1920s, there was stuff like weird tales, like places where sometimes you just be given like a piece of art, like a painting or something, and you'd have to write a story about it because like an artist came up with something interesting, and now you have to like work through it. Obviously, you know, it depends on the publisher and the author and so on and so forth. But you know, that's the kind of environment that they lived in, and so when you only have 20 pages to tell a story, you have to be you really have to find finesse in creating something interesting.
Yeah.
Absolutely true, which is a great segue into this announcement that we have,
Oh no.
which is we have a short story challenge. This is a challenge that we have just sort of came up for ourselves, you know, to really hone our writing skills. And we are each supposed to write a short story based on a blurb given by the other two. And as the person who came up with this idea, who really pushed this idea, Nikki has the honor of writing the inaugural short story challenge.
Why did I agree? Why did I do this myself?
Okay, so refresh my mind, guys. How long does this challenge go? Was it a week or two?
No, 3 weeks.
3 weeks. Okay, so we have 3 weeks to write this short story, and the blurb, it would have to be. Did we agree on 2,500 words?
Yeah, so the short story will be 2,500. So not the blurb to write the short story.
The
I
blurb
hope.
2,500. No, I don't have that much.
I hope you didn't write me 2,500 words that I all need to remember and then transform it into a story also worth only 2,500 words. Like, are you?
You might
are
as
you
well
kidding
just
me?
you might as well just take our blurb and put it there. if
Copy
that's
paste.
it.
Yeah.
So it's 2,500 words. Give or take, we don't want it to be that much over 2,500 words because it is a limit, but we also don't want it to be too little.
Rigid. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Okay.
here's Okay, I'm just going to find.
Did
This
you
is
and
our
Rob come up
blurb.
with this? Or like
This is
how
our
this-
blurb. In a world where magic and science dispute for mastery, the moon starts to fall towards the earth. Our hero seeks a solution to the emergency. And I'll forward this text to you later, Nikki. And
All right.
that's your thing. 2,500 words. And write a story based on that.
First of all, thank you for graciously letting me spearhead this idea. I think it's going to be a fun challenge. I will do my best to make it entertaining. Obviously, the great people of who are listening to this podcast will get to see the fruits of my strenuous labor after the 3 weeks expire, and I'm sure it will be an interesting thing to discuss. I'll have to have a look
Yeah.
and see what I can do.
Yeah. But also, I mean, personally, I think this is like a great way to really hone writing skills, because like with a challenge like this, we stop thinking about we just get to right down to the core of what would make a story work. We don't get bogged down by window dressing, so to speak, like all this fluff that is really not necessary. But why don't you tell us why you wanted to push this story, this short story writing challenge in the first place, Nikki?
Honestly, if we look at any sort of writing currently, if any of you are interested in writing, there's a lot of what feels like barriers to entry. You know, like some of you may feel like you are not quick on your feet when you're writing stuff, or maybe perhaps it seems daunting, the idea that you would be working on something that you didn't create yourself. But I think just like the things I spoke about in the in the publishment of something like Weird Tales, these little pieces of information that are being given to you, even if it's just like a painting or like a couple of sentences, it can really inspire you in something very interesting if you let it. And I think it's one of the traits a writer should an author really should try to hone, and it's the idea of working on something that may not be originally sort of like thought up entirely by you, or something that you have full control over, because in limitation there can be found some sort of virtues. Especially you can see that in when people are very passionate about something, and even though they're not allowed to do exactly what they have desired, they still make it the best that they can, right? That's what some of the real art, creating something from nothing. And if you are capable of that, then you will never be penniless as an author. You will always be able to do something. So it's a really powerful skill that I think anyone who wants to write should learn. And we'll see how good it is from my perspective. Let's see how well I can actually do it.
Cool.
I'll be just as happy if it sucks though. Like it will be like, well, you see,
I mean,
like I suck.
Writing is a craft. It takes practice, man. First you
true.
suck, then you become better.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
The idea of the moon falling towards the earth is it's got a fair tradition behind it, I think, in fantasy writing. Well, I'm not sure about this, but I was thinking about the legends of the Pacific continent, Mu. You know, have you heard of that? The lost continent of Mu, and there's various ideas, I think, about the moon having orbited the Earth much closer in ancient times. It's all a bit kind of cranky, but you could make a story out of it.
Yeah, I forgot to mention, what a crazy story you gave me for 2,500 words. Christ.
Well,
Ugh. I love it. I'm not
Yeah.
complaining.
yeah. You can just focus on one aspect of it, can't you? Like this story.
Yeah, I mean, I'll try to incorporate as much as possible from your
Yeah.
beginning blurb, obviously. That will be
I
my desire.
mean, what we've just been talking about, The God in the Bowl, it really, as you said, it's like a play, but a less competent writer would have strung it out and started the story with Conan being hired by this nobleman. There'd be a scene about Conan being hired, and then so on. He'd spin it out into several scenes. Whereas really, you only need to choose one scene and make all the ideas ray off from that one scene as he did.
Yeah, and that's a good point because this entire story happened in just one place. It's happened all in one place.
The French would really like it. These French 17th century critics who insisted that you had to preserve the unities. A play had to happen in a very short span of time and in just one place. So they didn't think much of Shakespeare, whose plays were sprawling over many places and covering years of time. They didn't approve of that at all.
I suppose this story, The God in the Ball, is really like how is it called in film? I think one shot film, like a film that only has one take basically in it, so to speak. It's like this mythical unicorn that a lot of films claim to be just one shot, but obviously there's cuts in most of these films that they say they're in one shot.
One shot is extremely, if you're talking about one long take, it's extremely difficult to pull off.
It's impossible, it sounds to me like. It has to be the perfect, like
No,
it has to,
well-
let's say if it takes like 45 minutes, the entire thing.
I mean,
Like nothing has to go wrong.
the best example would be The Heart of Darkness by Orson Welles. Like the first, was it The Heart of Darkness? I think that was a film. It had a introduction. It had like the beginning of the film was like one long take, and that was, not only is it technically challenging to achieve, because you got to remember the footage has a limit. Like each of those film cartridges could only run like I think it only has like 400 feet of film. So 400 feet it works out at 24 frames per second. That works out to be, I don't know, a few minutes or something like that. So just getting the film fed into the camera long enough, that is a major technical challenge of its own.
Yeah, there's Rear Window by Alfred Hitchcock, starring James Stewart. That happens in one room because the hero is bedridden. And
Is that one about with the crazy fan? Is that the one?
That's Psycho.
It's the one about he looks out the window and he suspects that there's a crime being committed in the house opposite. So that's a film that is restricted to one room. And then there's what's his name? Spielberg's The Terminal, which is just restricted to an airport terminal.
Well, actually, for me, the best film I've watched where everything just happens in one room. Well, technically, there are 3 scenes. 12 Angry Men, the original one.
Oh yes,
that was really good. The majority of the film happened in just one room.
That's right.
Although in the beginning there was a sort of like a cutaway to the front of the courtroom, and then at the end there was like a little bit where they're outside the courthouse, but everything happened inside the Jury's Room, 12 Angry Men.
Mm.
Great film.
Yep.
Just to quickly get back to Conan the Barbarian.
I mean,
Um,
yes.
another exchange, which is great, which is like tells you exactly who Conan is. So it's right at the beginning where Dimitri is basically asking him what to do, or like what's going on, why are you doing this? Why did you come here if not kill this man? Pursued Dimitri. I came to steal. Suddenly answered the other. To steal what? Rapped the Inquisitor. Food, the reply came after an instant hesitation. This dude has come to the museum to steal food. All right, Conan, whatever. Right. And then the the Inquisitor answers, "That's a lie," snapped Dimitro. "You knew there was no food here. Don't lie to me. Tell me the truth, or..." The Cimmerian laid his hand on his sword hilt, and the gesture was as fraught with menace as lifting off a tiger's lip to bare his fangs. "Save your bullying to the fools who fear you," he growled, blue fire smoldering in his eyes. "I'm no city-bred Nemedian to cringe before your hired dogs. I've killed better men than you for less than this." Thank you, Conan. Thank you for being the best protagonist of all time.
Yes. All right. Do you have anything to add, Rob?
No, I admire this story. I think I agree with everything Nikki says about it. I think you could, if you wanted to, if you had the time, you could do a really detailed study of it, charting the way the author inserts bits of background all the way through. You could do it with highlighter pens, various colors and so on. It's the sort of thing one never has time to do, but it could be done. It would be quite interesting.
There is there's a lot of building of the world, just like XJ said, happening in this book, and especially Nemedia and Stygia at the same time. But we also get little snippets into the world of Conan as a person, right? Like, and where he comes from, and what does it mean to be a barbarian. And I think you said it yourself, Rob, that there's a lot of like morals of the story. One to me is the idea of loyalty. I think that's what Conan is all about, right? At the end of the day, that's what he as a person, the core characteristic of Conan is loyalty. Either loyalty to yourself and your cause, or loyalty to the people who haven't wronged you or who have your back, right? And you can see that he's very unapologetic about it. So his loyalty is absolute, and maybe that is what it means to be the wild man from Cimmerian.
A purely personal loyalty, though, not loyalty to any kind of state or supra-personal organization. He simply can't understand that sort of thing at all.
That's right. Yeah, it's the idea of loyalty rather than belonging to something, right? Like the loyalty is the concept that is within him. It's not really like it's not a leash to something. It isn't just an expression of himself. There you go. That's all I gotta say about the best story.
And loyalty is indeed a beautiful thing.
All right, Confucius.
Okay, well, I guess we can end here for today. We look forward to any sort of comments you guys might have. What do you think of The God in the Bow? If you have read it yourself, please let us know. And with that, we will bid you all a good adieu and see you next time.
Take care, guys.
Right.